You're in the middle of a conversation. Everything makes sense. You understand every word, you respond naturally, and then you wake up and realize you were speaking a language that isn't your own. If you've ever learned a second language, there's a real chance this has already happened to you. And if it hasn't, you've probably wondered at some point, will it? Does dreaming in another language mean you've actually made it? That question points to something most people never stop to think about: how deeply a language can become part of who you are. Not just a skill you have, part of you. First, the direct answer: yes. People who speak more than one language can dream in any of them, and it's not rare. Studies collecting reports from multilingual people show that a significant portion have dreamed in a language other than their native one, some of them regularly. But what actually determines which language shows up in your dreams? It isn't random. Your brain during sleep doesn't make a conscious choice. It simply reaches for whatever is most active, most alive in your life at that moment. If you're fully immersed in a second language, working in it, living in it, building relationships in it every day, it starts appearing in your dreams. It's almost as if the brain is consolidating everything it absorbed, filing it away while you sleep. And there's something even more specific. You tend to dream in the language of the experience being processed. If something significant happened to you in another country, in another language, and that memory surfaces in a dream, there's a strong chance you'll be speaking that language again, because the memory and the language were recorded together. They're the same file. What about people who are just starting out? Do you need to be fluent to dream in another language? Not necessarily. There are accounts of people only a few months into learning who already dreamed in fragments of the new language. Isolated words, simple phrases, a conversation that didn't quite make sense but was happening in that language. The brain doesn't wait for fluency. It starts working with whatever material it has. What changes with level is depth. Beginners tend to have more fragmented, confusing experiences in the new language. More advanced speakers report fluid conversations, complete exchanges, without that feeling of searching for a word that won't come, which, ironically, mirrors exactly what it feels like when you're awake. But here is where it gets really interesting. There's something multilingual people describe that monolingual people will never fully understand. Certain things simply don't translate. Not the words themselves, but the feeling they carry. Swearing in another language hits differently. Not because the words are objectively stronger, but because they don't carry the same emotional weight as the ones from your native tongue. Those words grew inside you alongside everything you've ever lived. So when you swear in your first language, you feel it. When you swear in the other one, it can feel almost neutral. The same is true in the opposite direction. Many people who speak English as a second language say they can talk about difficult things, fears, painful memories, things they're ashamed of, with more emotional distance in English than in the language they grew up in. It isn't coldness. It's that the pain isn't embedded in those words the same way. And some people describe the reverse, that the second language became a safer place to be vulnerable. This happened because they learned the language at a time when they were more open, more curious, and carrying less emotional weight. The deeper point is this: when you genuinely learn a language, you're not just adding vocabulary. You're building a version of yourself that lives inside that language, with its own memories, its own emotional associations, an internal voice that thinks, plans, and feels in a slightly different way. And that version of you shows up in dreams, sometimes when you least expect it. Once you understand this, a lot of things start making sense. Why certain jokes only work in one language. Why some songs feel wrong in translation. Why you instinctively switch languages when the emotion changes. It isn't a quirk. It's because those things were built inside a system that carries specific emotions, specific contexts, a specific identity. A language you truly live in stops being something you use. It becomes something you are. If you speak more than one language, think about this. Which one do you count in when you're nervous? Which one do you think in when you're alone with a difficult feeling? Which one appears when you dream about something that really matters? Those answers say something about you that goes beyond fluency. If you're curious about how the brain and language quietly shape each other, there's more to explore along these lines. Subscribing is a good way to follow that thread. And if you've ever dreamed in another language, or if there's a language that somehow feels more like yours than another, leave it in the comments. Those small details tend to say more than they first appear to.